aldehyde, which then enters your system, which is really not good for you. So if you can stick with just denatured alcohol, a couple reasons to do that. This kind of alcohol is not regulated in any way. And if this was actually pure alcohol, you run this stove with no ventilation at all whatsoever. But since lawyers control everything now, you can no longer run that disclaimer because there could be something else in this alcohol.
Start burning up the oxygen so you keep the oxygen.
There's that, but there's also the contaminants in the alcohol that are no longer regulated. Heat, the stuff that you put in your gas tank in the wintertime, is an excellent source of fuel and better than moonshine. And on the internet, they always have competitions, and the standard is to take, I think, 2 cups of water. The alcohol's precisely measured in, and one stove will have a cook-off with another stove to see who can cook 2 cups of water to the fastest. And heat usually wins that competition. The problem with it is it's extremely expensive when you compare it to just denatured alcohol that's used as a solvent. A lot of times when you first get started, you get on eBay and there's stoves like this, which are beer can stoves. They heat one half and they cool the other half, and they slip them together and they drill some holes in them. And for Sierra camping and super lightweight stuff, here's your windscreen. How easy is that to put in your pack? And that weighs almost nothing. The problem with this stove is it doesn't last very long. It's kind of expensive when you think about it just being a beer can. And you have to get good with a whiskey jigger because you have to know how many minutes of fuel you want for how long you're going to cook an exact amount of water, because you want to get a boil for a certain amount of time to either sterilize your water or to add this to survival food, which is this little cup is supposed to be what the amount you need for a package of survival food, a package of instant potatoes. Now they've even got some pastas and stuff in the Kerr brand that you can add a can of tuna fish to and have dinner. And then there's all the stuff at Walmart they have in the camping area now.
I'm so sorry.
As you get a little used to it, this goes away. And you no longer use the jigger. It's kind of like drinking. After you get good at it, you just throw the jigger away and just free pour. Until you get one of these extremely expensive, or one of these not so expensive, shampoo bottles work great. And Nutrigel or T-Gel works really good because you can see how much alcohol you're putting in there. If you're not lucky enough to have dandruff and actually have to buy T-Gel, almost any shampoo bottle will work. But these are nice because you can see how much alcohol you're putting in there. And these are a little funnel that's actually designed because, as you see, most of the stuff is got real small openings on it to put your alcohol in. If you have a old Sternal camp stove kicking around, they work real good. Wind is a natural enemy to alcohol. Alcohol flame and wind don't get along too well. This is a Sternal Sternal stove that I just cut a can, set down in there, and at Transgea. These were made by the Swiss military. And these, if you've got 3 or 4 of them, you can do a lot with these. The reason being, you get about 6 minutes of heat out of one of these. You can regulate the heat with what they call a snuff ring. And this, depending on how you adjust it, and it's just something you have to get used to, you can regulate how much heat is coming out. You'd be surprised how a small alcohol flame will put out a ton of heat. The other thing that's good about these is they've got an O-ring sealed lid, so your alcohol is right in there. If you want to keep it in between, you can keep it right in the container. With this, you have to wait for it to cool down. Pour it into the cup, then pour it back into the container. With this, you can just take any leftover fuel you have, let it cool down. After you put it out with this, put the O-ring sealed lid back on it, and any fuel that you have left isn't wasted. It's not as critical measuring the fuel in because you don't have to deal with it. Just close it up and you're done. Alcohol fire is easily put out with water. It's put out with water better than anything else. Alcohol and water kind of instantly mix with each other. When you start with alcohol, you're going to notice that you can't see the fire. So you want to turn the lights down low so you can actually see what's burning. The day I caught the kitchen drapes on fire, I had a Transgea stove and I didn't let it cool down. And I set it on the table and I poured alcohol in it. And when the alcohol ignites, it doesn't ignite and go poof, it explodes when the stove is hot. And when it did, it shot vaporized alcohol all over the kitchen. And I could feel heat. And I'm thinking, wow, where is the heat coming from? Well, the heat was all around me because everything was on fire. It wasn't until the drape started putting out black smoke that I went, holy shit, that's what's burning. And luckily I have a sprayer on my sink and put the fire out quickly. But I think the important lesson in that is fire was all around me. And I was just far enough away from it, I felt heat. And until it became an actual fire, I didn't know anything was burning because I couldn't see it. There's no smell. There's nothing to tell you that things are burning. Okay, this is the light duty stuff. This is what you would pack in the Sierra Mountains with. This is what you would put in a bug out bag if you've only got 5 ounces and you want to take a heat source with you because you want to be able to sterilize your water and you want to use alcohol to do it. If you do that, I would invest in one of these incredibly expensive but very useful containers. These are made by Transgea and they have 2 really good functions. First off, you can get into these small openings, and the other is this seals up and it won't leak in your pack. If this gets upside down, it's not going to leak. If this gets upside down in your pack or it gets squished, this is going to leak a little bit. This could conceivably leaking alcohol in your backpack could conceivably make you a Roman candle. You don't want to soak your clothes with alcohol and then have your buddy light his cigarette.
Steve?
Yeah.
With this size container and these lightweight stoves, typically how many minutes or hours would you get of cooking time?
2 of these is going to heat this cup to a boil.
Okay.
If you want to heat it and sterilize it, you'd probably need 3 of these. Can't put that much fuel in this stove. So what you would probably do is take 2. Have one ready to slide back underneath there. Which is basically what you would do with the Transgeas and as well. And as you can see, I've got a half dozen of them. One ready to go because these put out a real good flame, and it's a flame you can turn down and you can store your fuel. These 2 stoves are what you would typically find in a Slavic kitchen. And what happens is this tube runs across the flame, which turns the liquid alcohol into a gas, which then comes up out of these holes. They're convenient in the fact that I've got a reservoir that I can pull from. And I've got a switch somewhere on here, oh, right here, that I can turn this off and on. Off isn't immediately off. Off is there's no more fuel going to it. In a minute or 2 it'll shut down. They all have a heat bowl in here, and what you have to do is turn these on. A little bit of alcohol fills up this heat bowl. This heat bowl heats this tube, and then it starts burning right. While it's doing that, alcohol burns with a tremendously high flame until it becomes heated. You want to keep a stove around, the pan that you're going to heat up, and you want to use that free time to do a couple things. Heat up your stove, and since this is burning so high, and your stoves are usually, I don't know if your stove is, but the hood in my house, the stove is covered with grease and hot pads and the kids' stickers and all kinds of stuff that could catch fire. And you don't really think about that until you get an alcohol flame burning this tall. Now you've got a problem. This just solved the problem. Okay, so you want to heat your pan up until this creates a regular flame that will look pretty much just like the flame that's on your gas stove. But it takes a little while for that to happen. This is another type of a European stove. If you see one of these, don't be afraid to buy it. These work really good. These would be really good for you've lost power and or you've run out of propane or for whatever reason. I bought 2 of these before I figured out this stove, and I'll show it to everybody because it's a common European stove, and it looks an awful lot like the ones that we used to put under our fondue pots. Does not work without this ring. This stove is almost useless without this ring, and they're all over eBay. And what this burns with a flame that comes up narrow and tall, and this distributes your flame. Just setting a pan on there doesn't work the same way. I wound up stuck with this thing on eBay going, crud, I got another one of those. Okay, but it came with the ring this time, and now this is a really good little stove to keep in your, like your 3-day power out thing that we just did. This would heat your coffee in the morning quite adequately. One thing that's nice about it is it does have an adjustment on it, and it's got a very easy to use way of putting it out. Okay, so if you see one of these, don't be afraid of it at all. This is the Japanese answer, sorry, to the Swiss military stove. I haven't had it long enough to know if the metals are as corrosive resistant as the metals in the Swiss stove. But I can say its function is identical. It looks identical, except it's got this little thing here, which is something that's going to soon break and probably be thrown in the garbage. I don't see it lasting that long, but it adjusts the same. It's got a snuff ring. It's a little more than half the price of the Swiss stove. But like I say, I don't know what the metals are. I don't know if it's going to outlast it as far as the corrosion. And it's got a pretty handy little way of setting it in there. And for something to throw in your camp box, you want to go to a hotel room, you're now comfortable with alcohol, and you want to heat up your coffee in the morning. You whatever you might want to do. Stoves like this would be real handy to have. You can cook inside with these. They don't leave an odor. Other than a little bit of an alcohol odor which quickly dissipates. It's good to take some kind of cup along with you so that when you are done, I can drain all the alcohol from 2 or 3 stoves. Say I had 3 stoves full because I was expecting to do 15 or 20 minutes of cooking, and I changed my other mind, which happens sometimes. Pour my alcohol back into here and then easily back into the container. These are a couple, this would also work good for inside cooking. You got to remember, wind is the natural enemy of alcohol. It's hard to get an alcohol flame to burn right when it's in the wind. Here's one version of it. This is the cheaper version. These are available online. They're the only ones that look like that And these function a lot better than these. These are twice the price of these. These are handmade in a guy's shop. These were handmade in Japan. What I want to do is demonstrate this stove. This comes apart and it all fits together with inside itself. And if I was going to leave the house, I could take one stove with me, and as we say around here, the stuff had hit the fan. This is what I would take, would be this one box. And the reason for that is real simple. It'll work anywhere, and wind doesn't affect it.
What's the name of that one?
This is a Transgea. This kit comes in 4 different, I want to say qualities, but it's not quality. 4 different types. They're all shaped the same. They all look the same. One does not have the Teflon coating. When you combine the type of heat that alcohol puts out and a pure aluminum pan, it's like, I don't know, it's like trying to cook glue to peanut butter. It is going to stick. I don't care how much oil you put in it. This is the next grade up. It's got a Teflon coating. On our last trip, we cooked eggs in this pan with no grease. And scrambled eggs. And there was no problem. And it was a quick, easy cleanup with a dry washcloth. So I don't know that this is Teflon, but it's some kind of a non-stick. The next step up is some kind of a bulletproof aluminum, which is like a $20 increase, and I couldn't see the benefit of it. And then there's another step up, which is a better Teflon than this. But this stuff, I mean, if you can cook eggs without them sticking, I can't imagine what you would need any more for.
Tell them why you put your hand over the top.
Okay, the reason I'm putting my hand over the top here, because I can't see that flame. I don't know if that flame's burning or not. When that stove warms up, I want to turn both those fans on, which will be air coming from 2 different directions. And this stove is actually recommended to use in the wind because the wind makes it work better. I'm just putting a little water in there so I don't burn my pan up. You can buy kits, mess kits, where everything kind of fits all in together. These are really handy. If you get them, I would recommend either getting the Teflon or get something that's got some copper on the bottom of it, because these get real sticky too. The cheaper ones that are out there, they look good. You take them out there, you cook with them the first time, and you go, man, I ain't packing that piece of junk home, because it is so covered with the crud that you were trying to cook, it just isn't even worth packing home. The inside is I think stainless steel, but this copper on the backside really helps distribute that alcohol heat, which wants to be intent in one area. Okay, that is going. And that is still going. And the flame, if you could come up here and see, is not largely affected by that. I've done this at home with, you know, the big 14-inch mega fan. I've actually turned that on this on high, and I didn't bring it because the effect was about the same. So this is, like I said, if I had to leave the house, one thing was going in the bug out bag. This is what would go in there. It all fits into a container this size, because that untwists and fits inside itself. For home use, these originated as a way for safe cooking on boats. The thing that was considered safe about them was you didn't have a pressurized tank. A pressurized tank on a boat is a real scary thing, not something you want. You don't want an explosion type fire on a boat. The other reason this was considered safe for a boat is it is put out really easy with the best resource you have, and that's water. A bucket of water splashed on this and it's done. It's over. You've just taken the fuel and you've eliminated it. It's pressurized like the old, remember the old Coleman camp stove white gas? Okay. The difference being this fuel lasts indefinitely. I think white gas, the most you can plan on getting out of it is 3 years. And I'm not sure how you get that, because I've tried to use white gas that was a year old and it didn't burn right. Alcohol stores the best when it's not in any kind of a metal can. Up here in the front I've got what I use to store, and that is just pop bottles. Pop bottles. If you can get something that's clear or semi-clear, you can see it. You want in lantern fuel, kerosene, they have a grade that's called K1, and it's the top grade. And the thing that makes it K1 is not the difference in the kerosene, because the grade below it is the same kerosene. It's the container that it's stored in. And the container can expand and contract, which means every night in our high desert low temperature, you're not sucking air in, and then when it warms up in the day, expanding it and blowing air out, which brings water in, water out, water in, water out. If you put it in one of these and keep it out of sunlight, because sunlight is obviously the natural enemy to plastic, keep it in a dark place, that container is designed for shipping to actually be able to expand and contract a little bit without pulling air in the lid. It's easy to see, it's easy to inspect. Alcohol in a steel can, the alcohol that's in these that we took on our last trip had a bit of a discoloration in it, because the steel can that it was bought in had started to deteriorate after 3.5 years. And it was rusting around the lid, corroding around the lid. It hadn't corroded inside the main body of the can yet, but the corrosion was on the outside and it was working its way in. 3 years. I would say if I kept this out of the sunlight in a dark place, I could come back in, I think, indefinitely, and this would still be here. These would be there as long as I kept them out of the sunlight. A lot of people, the first time they pump one of these up and they light it, scares the heck out of them. In here you've got two little bowls. The first bowl, when you turn this on, you got to kind of watch it, will fill up and it'll pour down into the second bowl. Okay, and since you can't see it, I'll tell you what's going on. The first bowl is starting to fill, and it's now pouring. A little bit has poured down into the second bowl. And where people get themselves in trouble with this is they light the top bowl and you wait a short period of time expecting the bottom bowl to light. The bottom bowl will light. It just takes about a minute to do it. And then the flame comes up and the height of the flame gets them excited. And if they're doing this in the house and they're doing it on the regular stove, and now you've got a flame that's up this high, and like me, the first time I did it, I had pot holders, and of course there's the grease up there that is unaffected. You want to clear all that stuff out. You want to make sure the hood is clean. Okay. Okay, if we had a dark day, you could see that flame. It's probably up about this high.
So that's sweet smell? Is that
This is what I call free heat. This is when I get my frying pan hot. Okay? Also with alcohol, if it's burning blue, the air quality of the flame is probably pretty safe. When you look at and it'll depend on what kind of alcohol you have, whether you're using heat, denatured alcohol of a high grade or denatured alcohol of a low grade, as to how much orange is in the flame. If there's a lot of orange in the flame, you might want to open a window. This is how you put a Transgea stove out.
Nice.
When you're a good shot, which I always am except for today. Okay, that's out.
And that one had orange.
Towards the end there.
Yeah, when I opened it up and the wind started blowing in there, it did. Because like I said, the wind is a natural enemy too. These are designed to be out of the wind. They're in a enclosed cabin, in a boat, in your house. If you wanted to cook dinner for the kids with this, you could do it pretty much like you would on a propane stove. It's not cooperating today.
it's the wind.
Got invested in all those long necks lighted.
Yeah. And when you light these, sometimes you can cheat if you use a match and just drop your match down into the bottom bowl, and then the bottom bowl, you don't have to wait for the top bowl to ignite the bottom bowl, and it makes everything quicker. Your light duty, your European style, these don't put out as much heat, the European styles. I would hate to try to cook a big dinner on one of them. The thing nice about them is that you have a bigger reservoir. These are great when the proverbial stuff hits the fan, something you got to take with you. And these are great to keep in the house. If there's no other form of fuel, you've got a way to cook a substantial meal with relevant ease, with a fuel that stores indefinitely. So, yeah.
Talk about the fuels. How about Everclear? 190%.
I've used it. It doesn't burn as well as denatured alcohol. Because they put stuff in there for flavor.
It used to.
Well, yeah, not in the stuff you got from, my old hillbilly relatives. But if you go buy a bottle of Everclear now, it'll say with apple flavoring. There'll be, and it'll say, the old Everclear of yesterday, I think, was 190 to 195 proof. The Everclear you buy now is 180 proof. So that other 5 or 10% is something else, something that's going to burn and cause orange flame rather than blue flame. And I bought some, I tried it, I immediately didn't like it, and I didn't use it again. And it was just for that one reason. In my mind, I'm thinking, what's this other 5 or 10%? Is that something that's going to asphyxiate me if I'm trying to cook in an enclosed room? I don't know. I know that this alcohol isn't regulated, the denatured alcohol that they use for solvent. And so you will sometimes get some that has a little bit of an orange flame, and the next batch will burn perfectly blue.
Is that rubbing alcohol?
No, you don't want to use that unless you absolutely. It's only a little over 100, and I from what I understand, it's more explosive. It burns different. It can get you in trouble.
So, what would your, in order of best to worst, what would you choose for fuels?
Ace brand denatured alcohol solvent. Every time I bought Ace brand denatured alcohol, it's burned the cleanest. There's 100. Everybody makes denatured alcohol. Ace brand seems to be about the best. Coming down the ladder would be heat, and not because it isn't as good of a fuel. It's expensive as heck. Coming down the ladder from that would be Everclear, and coming down from that would be jet fuel, because jet fuel is a carcinogen. That would be the order I would use the fuels if I was in a pinch and had to use something other than denatured alcohol.
Have you taken any of your own?
I actually have the stuff at home that I got off the internet on how to make a denatured alcohol still. The thing that's neat about building a still that you can cook with this is you don't have to use copper. The way alcohol interacts with metals is oftentimes what makes it poisonous. Some of this denatured alcohol is only denatured because they made alcohol in steel containers. Alcohol and aluminum, they don't mix. If you get these kind of containers for fuel, some of these, if you'll check, are actually aluminum. Mostly they're stainless steel, but there's cheap one of these out there that are aluminum. And if you put your alcohol in one of these, it affects the alcohol negatively, makes it less burnable, and it affects this negatively, making it possibly carcinogenic next time you put your drinking water in it. So once one of these has been used for alcohol, it's always for alcohol. It's proven itself. Okay, it must all be stainless steel because it didn't corrode. Okay, I'll use that for a container. Then don't turn around and put it back into your water stock, because you don't know what grade of metal was used in this. If you want to come up and look later on, you can see that these stoves, even when you clean them up with the green scratchy, and even the very good Swiss ones, all have different levels of corrosion in them. I usually clean these up once a year, and that's what I don't know about this Jap takeoff. If the quality of the metal is as good as the Swiss yet. But it works identical, it works the same. And this isn't going to cooperate with me because of the wind, so I'm not going to mess with it anymore. But pretty much that's about all of it. Yeah.
No aluminum, plastic's okay,
Plastic is preferable.
stainless steel is okay.
Stainless steel is okay.
What about titanium?
Don't know.
No titanium with that.
Don't know. This bottle I think runs about $30. I can't imagine what it would run if it was made out of titanium. It'd probably be $130.
Well, I got a couple pretty cheap.
Did you?
Yeah, a long time ago.
You know what? I would put a small amount of alcohol in there and come back in a year and check it.
Okay.
Also, because the Sierra guys, I mean, they have races with these stoves. I mean, they're just way over the top. If anything questions like that you have, just type in Sierra camp stove, and you're going to get all kinds of opinions about alcohol versus the small propane bottles versus my stove can cook 2 cups of water 7 seconds faster than yours can, so go. It's kind of amazing how competitive that gets. But like I said, when you start out, if you don't have these type bottles, a small funnel and a 1 ounce whiskey jigger, until you get used to how much alcohol you can put in your stove, how long it burns, because that's basically your switch right there. With the Transgea, you can turn it up and down with this. With the European styles, you have a stove, you have a knob you can turn the heat down, and with the marine style, you have a pressurized system that you can hear it roaring because it is pressurized. I didn't get this one up to heat. I might mess around with it after we get done and see if I can get it up to heat. Also in this kit, I just remembered what the other $20 was for. One of these small, this is worth its weight in gold for heating water. This works by far better than this for heating your water up, and it fits right in there, and it is completely surrounded by the heat. Yeah.
We were in Oshkosh. How long did it take to heat the water for our coffee?
With the big one, which doesn't fit in the kit, about 3.5 minutes.
Go that quick.
About 3.5 minutes. I actually timed this one yesterday. It was this full was boiling water in about 5 minutes, and this held enough alcohol to boil water, to get the water to a boil and maintain the boil for 5 minutes, which is, I think, what we're supposed to be at. I'm not sure, but that's what I always thought the rule was. If you've got Sternal and you've got any experience with Sternal, basically Sternal is alcohol fuel. That's what's in there that burns. And if you've got any of these sitting around, these make excellent stoves. And they're fairly cheap because they're old technology. Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, Sternal now makes an alcohol burner for their kits.
Do they?
I think that's who it is. Somebody that used gel fuel now makes a nice alcohol burner to substitute for the gel.
Okay, that's something I haven't run across yet, and as soon as I do, I'm going to have to buy one and then check it out, because that's what I do. Huh?
I think I saw it at Sportsman's Warehouse.
Okay. Any other questions?
So if you were bugging out or whatever, the temperature that the alcohol uses is a much higher rate than like propane. Like if I had my choice between the propane canister versus the bottle of alcohol, is there a benefit to one over the other?
Yeah. If you got a 3-day bug out, get home bag. I call them get home bags, because they're gonna have, when they take me out of my house, they're gonna have to bring a SWAT team to do it. But to get home, if it takes me 3 days to get home, and I've got 3 emergency meals, 3 packs of instant potatoes, 6 tea bags, and I want a little bit of extra hot water in case I can't get home on the water I've got in my 3-day pack, this is going to get me home. This is not going to quite do it. There's one that's made in between these 2 sizes, which, believe it or not, I don't have, which I'm going to go home and immediately fix as soon as I get my buttons on the internet, would get me home. Okay, this is how much fuel you need in a 3-day pack to get home, emergency situations. And you can subsidize, you can conserve fuel by, I think they call it a Kentucky earth stove. Anybody heard of that? Where you dig a hole in the ground. What do they call it? Okay. And you put the little pipe in the side. turbo stove. These work great in those. If you don't happen to have this kit, this works great in a hole in the ground with any kind of a screen that you could put over the top of it like that. That's actually conserving fuel because you're directing more of the heat on what it is you're cooking. And you can subsidize. Once that fire is going and established, you can pull your alcohol stove out of there and throw some twigs in that and conserve what's in this bottle. Also, if you're not a real Boy Scout and starting fires is something foreign to you, which, I mean, unless it's the kitchen drapes, I'm not real good at starting a fire. Never have been. This stuff works great for starting a fire. Okay? So, yeah, this kit with this, with the treatment on here, and believe me, you can tell even just cooking in this, and this is a higher quality. This you spend all day cleaning, you got to use water. This wipes out with a dry rag. For in-home cooking, but they don't put out a lot of heat. And if you just want to add a very few ounces to your pack with a small thing of fuel, this would be your ultralight stuff right here. And again, when you're starting, these are a must. Either the funnel or bottles like this that have the small filler tube.
Steve, question in the back.
Oh yeah.
And the fondue pot thing, you know.
This thing right here?
Yeah, I have a lot of those at home, but I don't have that metal. You said it works well with it, makes it work better. One, can you buy that separately? Or two, can you use the things for stoves that you put underneath the grate? Cheap aluminum ones.
I don't. What are you talking about? What's that?
Like a protector.
You know the plate that goes underneath the stove?
Electric
Like
stove.
a metal plate? It's almost similar to that.
I would sure try it. If you've got a bunch of these, the flame that comes off this particular one is high and narrow. When it hits this, that flame becomes wide and divided. Something about the shape. When you put eggs in a pan that's on this thing without this, what you get is burnt eggs in the middle and raw eggs around the outside. So unless you want to sit there and keep stirring it over that hot spot, like I said, I threw two of these away until I wound up with this one that had this ring. There was that much difference. I put that on there now and take a pan like this, and I can cook an egg in a couple eggs in 3 minutes. Okay. But like I said, I threw two of those away that didn't have the ring on them. Anybody else?
I would have taken any of those stoves when it came to survival class. Just getting a fire started was the hardest thing from the first day. Any of those would have totally helped out in that situation, even the cheapest one.
Yeah, just if you can get out of the wind, and we're catching a steady wind right now. I really wanted to get this thing going, but like I said, this is for inside the house type use. Once that flame is blue and the evaporation is going, you couldn't blow this thing out with a hurricane, but getting the initial part of that started, it's not going to work here. And with that, with this stove, you can heat up. If you use the free fuel at first, while you're filling up, this pan will be hot and ready to cook with by the time the stove is chugging, and you'll hear it. It'll be very pronounced. These fold down to this size.
Handmade.
These are the handmade ones. This is the cheaper Japanese one. These are a lot nicer to use, but they're twice the price. And when you see, and the only place I found them is on eBay. A guy makes these. They're CNC cut. This thing is really difficult to put together. Every time I put it together, I cuss it. And when you're changing out pots, that's hard to do with a hot pot. This, I got a hot pad. Okay. This, they copied this, but they didn't actually know what they were building. If you're changing out pots, you got something that you can pick this up with. Okay, and now I want to put in a new one. I'm cooking again. This thing, I've got to hold it down. This is stuck in there too tight. Doesn't work very well. So the extra $10 for this type, and you'll see it as soon as you find it, you'll go, oh, there it is. It's the extra $10.
It looks cool.
Yeah, and it looks cool.
And just make sure you're switching them out, not having alcohol to a hot burner.
Yeah.
And the little Teflon pans, how he's using the handle, that's a must when you're stirring because the pots are really light. We made dinner just last week. We were camping and tested it all out. And that was a must, I noticed. Just hold on to it.
And these work pretty good. And this is a Japanese cheap thing. And I've got a couple chances to use it. It actually comes with the Japanese stove. And I don't know how the Japanese stove is for corrosion, but this thing's actually pretty handy. And it's easy to swap your pots in and out of. All you need is a hot pad. This thing, whoever designed it should have to use it. So, with the light stuff too, you can do a lot of stuff with a tin can. The tin can, I've got the wind guards down in there. I've also got an extra cooker. I've also got something that I can put down in the ground to keep the dirt out of my stove. If, say, I want to build a bit of a chimney, a tin can can be real useful with alcohol cooking. And with these, yeah, I'm sure you can hear how flimsy that is. That weighs nothing. And it goes together that easy. Anything else? Cool. All right, thanks.